You're listening to The Power Project. I'm your host, Brandy Vogt, and it is my goal each week to inspire you to go out and lead purpose-filled lives and own your God-given power. Now, there's another gal that's in the same space as I am. You may have heard of her. She has a similar platform and mission that I do. It's Ms. Rachel Hollis. Yeah, I bet you have heard of her. So I had the privilege of attending her Rise conference last weekend. And holy cow, you guys, there were 7,000 women that came into one room that are inspired, that are walking in purpose, that are determined to live their best lives that God has called them to. And one such lady is a gal that is just super on fire to speak into women. So she and I are going to have a little chat about purpose today. So let's jump right in, shall we? Welcome back to The Power Project. I'm so excited to have my guest on today. She and I met over social media to begin with. And then over the last weekend, we had the privilege of getting to meet one another in person. So you guys, this is my friend, Rita Bautista. Hey, Rita, how are you?
Hey, Brandy. I am so extremely excited to be on with you today. It was such a pleasure to meet you over such a beautiful weekend that really just was so uplifting. And, you know, I feel like ever since I met you, things just have continued to roll. So like I said, I'm very excited to be on with you today.
Oh my gosh, wasn't that such an absolutely awesome weekend?
Absolutely. I mean, I've come back with like my cup completely full. My passion is lit on fire and I am ready to go.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, we had the joy of going to the Rise conference, which I highly recommend. This is not a paid ad, but I fully recommend that you go sign up for one of the Rise tour dates next year. There's 4 different ones. So, Rita, have you been to a personal development conference before this one?
You know, I think professionally, I've been to a lot of different conferences along the way, and there's always a slight touch of, personal development, but nothing like this. A lot of my personal development that I've worked on has been just me over the years going to therapy, listening to a lot of different motivational speakers, Abraham Hicks, Tony Robbins, obviously Rachel Hollis, all of these speakers on YouTube, podcasts, that was my personal development, and things I continue to do are like reading, oh my God, a ton of books on all of this. So that was really what I would use to help pump me up. But honestly, nothing is geared towards women as much as this conference was. And it was extraordinary. I don't really even know what else to say. I was just so moved by every single piece of it. It's the first conference that I literally did not leave the room from the moment that I sat down till the moment it was over every day.
Wow, that's awesome. I think that, I've been to women's conferences before in the like Christian women's conferences, but not just a women's empowerment conference like this. And I think it was really impressive that there were 7,000 women in this one conference. And we almost skirted away without anyone being anything less than warm and welcoming and inviting. We had a little incident like the last day.
Really?
Yeah. And
sad.
I know all weekend I was like, this is awesome. Like women can come together and not, have any issues. And we had a little issue over like a seat and it kind of was ugly.
Oh, we had something like that too. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, you're right.
I was like, girl, like I wanted to turn around and be like, you are not lifting your sister up. Like, are you taking notes today?
Right. Where are the elephants right now in the room? Cause you were starting to be a little crazy.
Oh my gosh. I know. I was like, okay, guys, we almost made it. But no, it was a really great weekend. And I too, like you, am a personal development junkie. All the books, all the videos, all the podcasts. I'm a student of life. And I think that we only become better at whatever we pour into and whatever we, actively pursue to become better at. So did you start in on the personal development journey at a young age, or how long have you been kind of on that track?
So it's interesting, right? Because I think a lot of personal development starts at a very young age without us even knowing. So my parents, and I'm very open. I think I learned to be vulnerable and open and comfortable in my vulnerability at a very young age. But my parents divorced when I was like 2 years old. So I was raised in a single parented household. Who my mother's also Honduran. So, so if anybody knows about the Hispanic culture, it's very strong, and we're supposed to be like the strongest women in the world, and like we're never supposed to show emotion, and we're always supposed to have it together, and we're always supposed to be. It's like every single thing possible that a woman is supposed to be, and half of the time is not. That's what we're supposed to be, and so it was really difficult, challenging for someone who was coming from a single parented household, where at the same time you're developing like your cultural aspect and then assimilating to a culture that is not foreign, because obviously I was born here, but like learning societal norms from school, friends, and all that stuff versus coming home and then also trying to like understand what was going on at home culturally, you know? So it was a weird balance. And so I remember my first time ever going to peer mediation was in 5th grade. And there was a whole bunch of girls. For some reason, you know, something happened with the girls or whatever. And the guidance counselor brings us in, and they sit us down, and they're like, hey, we need to talk. So we have this conversation, and like, you know, we're trying to like cool down the issue. And we find out during that whole entire process, weirdly enough, that all the girls in that room were from single parent households.
Oh,
interesting, right? Like it was just very interesting and so different. And we all had different backgrounds. Like one girl was from Russia, the other girl was African American, one was American, like, you know, Caucasian, and I'm like this Honduran girl trying to figure it out. Like, and it was just like, wow. And I didn't reflect on that at that moment. And then I continued going throughout life, and I was, you know, troubled teen, a lot of issues, you know, obviously related to me acting out. And now as an adult, I can look back and be like, yeah, this is acting out as a direct result of just things that I was missing, you know, things that I was trying to find love in different places. So at 15, then I was brought to therapy once for women who, it was like a women's therapy group. And I didn't really enjoy that at all. So I was like, okay, whatever. And then after like failed relationships back to back, I finally, it was like my last one where I was like, you know what, there's something, not that they weren't wrong, you know, not that they weren't wrong in their situations, but I need to start figuring out this journey for myself and see what it is about me that I need to reflect on, because clearly something's not working out. And I found this amazing therapist in New Orleans who was, half Hispanic. Well, she was full Hispanic, but she was also like raised in the US, went to school here, all of that. So we were able to connect on so many different levels. And I stuck with her. I committed. It was the first time that I had made a commitment to myself to better myself. And I stayed with her for about 4 years. And while I was with her, I was, you know, there's so many things that happen, like so many life things that sometimes you can't stop, right? Like grief, loss, just everything possible. And I continued to like realize that I needed to continue working on myself. Because, you know, people truthfully will only believe in you if you believe in yourself. And yeah, it was really hard for me to get to that point. And I literally went through this. I felt like I was going through the ringer. But as I was doing that, I was reading millions of books on personal development and listening to all of these podcasts, all of these YouTube videos, along with my therapy. And that's when I finally was like, this is it. This is what I am passionate about. This is what I love. I want to share the information that I have with other people so that they can avoid some of the ways that I wasn't always super healthy with myself, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful gift to give to the world. Like if, you know, if someone can learn from, I know that we all have to make our own, you know, our own choices in life and learn from our own lessons. But I think it's beautiful if you can put your lesson out into the world and say, hey, you know, this is what I spent years of therapy and reading and learning. This is what I found. And also just to let others know that they're not alone, because I don't know why we as human beings, but specifically women, I think.
Oh yeah.
Just, we just tend to really feel alone in the world. And that was one of my biggest takeaways this weekend. I was like, my gosh, like if you are in your network, your community, your neighborhood, whatever it looks like, if you don't feel like there's someone there that understands you, or someone there that has been through your struggle, or someone there that has the same jacked up thinking, there are people, are people in the world that have gone through the same things as you. There's people in the world that have the same crazy thoughts about themselves,
Right.
and it's that whole community aspect of sharing our lessons with one another and our struggles and building each other up. So
yeah,
I think that's a great gift that you can give.
So what made you get into, or what has been your light that shined on personal development? And you were like, this is something that I need to incorporate for me, and to also talk to others about things that they can work on for themselves or continue to empower themselves with.
Yeah. So my mom was like the queen of self-help books.
Oh, wow.
And they were always like in our house. And it was like, how to have a happy marriage, how to, like be a good mom, or all these things. And I literally could not stand self-help books. I was like, my gosh, like I am an avid reader, from the time I was 4 years old, but I just never got this whole self-help world, which is what it was called back then. We say personal development at this point, but
right.
I was raised with a really strong support system as a kid. I had two parents that my dad constantly told me that, I could do anything that I set my mind to. And my mom, told me that I was going to be a leader one day. And so I didn't necessarily see the necessity for the personal development. And then the flip side of that is my mother was a big fan of therapy. And I had no use for therapy. I hated therapy. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was like, there is legit like zero reason for me to go talk about my problems with a stranger and pay him money, So I kind of have like my dad's personality where we can just handle it and figure it out on our own, is what we think, But I really started digging into the world of personal development for a completely different, a flip of that, because I had that support system, and because I felt the need to speak into others and tell them that I believed in them and tell them that they could do it, I was seeing this limited mindset where people just didn't give themselves credit enough to think that they could actually do, whatever it was that they had called on their heart to do. So my personal development journey was really more of, how do I help others see this? How do I help others gain confidence? How do I help others develop a growth mindset? And so when I started listening to the speakers and the Mel Robbins and the Tom Bilyeu and the Brendan Burchards, and when I started digging into that, I immediately was like, oh my gosh, like I have this voice. I've been telling people these things all my life. You and I discussed that earlier, and you can jump in when I wrap this up and talk to this also. I was that person that all my life was the friend that someone came to me and told me what they couldn't do. And I told them exactly how they could do it and why they were equipped and why they had to do it. So so I love it. I love the whole realm of it. I love the fact that even though I'm a very self-aware person, there's always room for me to grow. There's always room for me to become a better version of me. There's always room for me to figure out like, oh, okay, this is why I think this way. This is why I do that. This is why I need to work on becoming better at that, you know? So yeah, so that's the whole world of personal development for me. And you were saying that you kind of had, you know, a similar experience growing up.
Yeah, I think, it's ever since I was really young. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, like I mentioned, my background, my mom was a single parent. So like for her, in her mind, she would always just tell me whatever was on her mind. And I would listen. And I think I took that with me to the point where people would like come to me. I've always been that person, that friend that people like just for some reason feel like the guards are dropped completely and they just can tell me whatever. And I have always been the person to be uplifting and say, no, you can do this. Like, it's okay. I think that's the hardest thing, right? In personal development is people forget that it is okay. And I've always just been that person to tell other people. Now, I'm not going to say that there haven't been times where I need that it's going to be okay sometimes too, right? Because especially one of those things that I learned from this conference was that we all have those moments where Becky with the good hairs in her head and she's telling us you can't do this. But, for me, I've always been the person to tell everyone else, no, you can do this. And this is how you can do it. And you can get out of this. It just has always been something that came naturally. And I will never forget, like one of my, a personal person in my family, who was going through a really tough time and they'd gone through a divorce. And I was just like, look, you're going to be okay. Like, you're going to be okay. You need to get up, put some makeup on your face, like go out, go out and regain your confidence. And I really think that that's basically what it is like we're teaching and telling people how to regain their confidence in themselves when they've been, for example, I've seen this happen too, where like moms, and I love my moms. I can't wait to be a mom one day, but it's like, you guys do so much for everyone else so selflessly, which I think is the most beautiful thing in the world, but then it's like after the years of doing so much for everyone so selflessly, they start to forget who they are. And I've gotten to that point too, where it's like, you talk to girlfriends and they're like, I don't even recognize myself anymore. Like, I don't remember who I was. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things, to be able to talk to people in those situations, although I'm not necessarily in that, to be able to tell them, look, you can find yourself again. This is how you can do it. Like, you're still in there. Sometimes it's unpacking like one piece at a time of those things that you put on top, but making sure to keep time for yourself, even if it's 15 minutes a day, to just remember who you were, or who you are. And yeah, I mean, that's just been something that naturally has come from me, and it's, yeah.
Well, I think it's very, observant for you to realize that, because you're single you don't have children yet. Mm-hmm. You don't have children yet. So it's very observant, because I was always the girl with the big dreams. Mm-hmm. I was always the girl that had the call of purpose on my heart from a very young age. Mm-hmm. I always tell people that I didn't necessarily have to go looking for my voice or my purpose. I just had to step into what I was being called for all of my life. And so, going into college, there were massive dreams on the table and goals. And then I lost myself for a while, and I ended up being a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, which it was the greatest gift of my life. It just wasn't necessarily a plan that I had put on my life plan. And, in that 10 years, I was committed to, if I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm going to be the best dang stay-at-home mom anyone's ever met. Mm-hmm. And I did it, and I lived for my kids. But at the same time, I still knew all along that there was another call on my heart. Mm-hmm. I still knew that this was part of my story, but this wasn't my whole story. that I would, emerge as walking in purpose in a different way, and something that was separate from being a mom and separate from being a wife. So, and do not get me wrong here. I know that there are women on the face of this planet that everything in their heart says, like, these are my babies. I am a mom, and this is what I was made for. And I highly commend that, because it's the hardest dang job I've ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew there was something else as well. And so there was a part of having to discover myself and come back around to, okay, this is the girl who gave her first speech at 9 years old in front of a room full of Rotary men, and knew at that moment she was meant to be speaking in front of crowds. This is the girl that dreamt of changing the world. This is the girl that was, had purpose in her life. So that's been a really fun thing for me to rediscover in the past, 2 years, really 2 to 3 years of really kind of unpacking what it looks like to walk in purpose. So for you, was there ever a time you felt like you lost yourself, or you felt that maybe you felt separated from walking in purpose, or even you felt a call, you just didn't know what the heck it looked like or how to get there?
Yeah. Have you ever read the book, The Alchemist?
No, I have it on a list to read, but I have not.
Okay. So I recommend you and everyone listening to this read The Alchemist, because I feel like it's such a short book, but it explains my personal journey. And I think you can read that book over and over again in life, and it will literally mean something different every single time. Long story short, it's basically a person who's like trying to find purpose, and they go through this long journey, and they come back, and purpose was where it started all along.
Yeah.
So mine was kind of like that. And I'll be honest with you, like and I think we talked about this when we were in Dallas, but I always longed to work in politics, and I wanted to be in politics, and it was just a big thing. It was something I wanted to do. I think in the long run, I will eventually still do something when times are a little bit different. I think right now the climate is a little, it's a little, how do I put this? Like, it's uncomfortable, I think, across the board.
It's nasty.
It's
nasty. I mean, and you and I both talked about this.
Yeah.
I was a person that wanted to work in politics also.
Yeah.
And I literally right now feel like I dodged a bullet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
At this point.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. I truly believe that you did. I'll tell you, like, I had finally landed my dream job. Now, it took me about 10 years to finish college, undergrad. I had a full-blown career before I finished school. So I left school, and then I went back to school, because I was like, well, I'm supposed to be something bigger than this. And I thought college was supposed to be it. And once I graduated, I got my job. I eventually ended up getting my job in government relations, because I'm the person who says, if I'm going to do this, I do it.
Yes.
And I think that that's the kind of, like, my claws like shove in, and I am like, you cannot get them out. So long story short, I ended up in government relations with zero. I've never worked for a politician, period, but I had all the relationships set up for the previous position I was in. So they gave me a chance, and my boss was an amazing guy, like super, like the best person you could ever work for. On the flip side, some of the people that I was representing weren't so much. I worked for a trade association at the time. And so I, at first, was so full of joy and happiness. And then as time was going on, I could feel myself getting drained and more drained and more drained. And I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do? This is what I've always wanted. This was what I wanted, like this, at least this is what I thought I wanted, and literally what's funny is, like, my journey of personal development didn't necessarily kick off until that position started, which it's like, life will shift you in so many different directions. And I think one of the things I do want to say is, for anybody who may be confused and trying to find their purpose right now, Like, we are all on our own journey, and every single person has a different part of their life and different part of their path that they're in right now. And if you feel like you're not there yet, trust me, the moment you will feel something inside of you that will tell you, like, it's like the little child who's been calling to you all along, and you finally turned her volume up and said, okay, it's your time to talk.
That is exactly the best way I can think to describe it. Like it, and mine, mine was like, oh my gosh, like I've had this in me all along. And I spent all these years thinking, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And thinking, I don't know. I don't know how I'm supposed to use the gifts that I have. And it's like, I've always known. And you and I, we've spoken about this. I do women's retreats. I speak out in advocacy for nonprofit organizations. I speak into women's groups, but I know. And when you, like, the best way I can explain mine is when, like, Rachel Hollis is on stage, or Mel Robbins is on stage, or Christine Kane is on stage, or a female speaker is doing it at the level that I 100% feel that I've been called to be at eventually. It's like my heart races, my breath catches in my throat, and I almost feel angry, like not jealous, not resentful, but like angry that I'm being a bystander and observing. And I'm like, if that is not like your purpose pounding on your heart, saying, this is what you're made to do. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep growing. Keep pushing. And I think, like you just said, if you ever feel like, you're searching and this isn't where you're supposed to be, it's okay, because it's all part of the process.
Right.
It's part of the journey. And don't you feel like being in that position, with the great boss you had, and with the job that you thought you had aspired, to have, that was going to be your end goal, but finding out that it didn't align with who you represented, like, your journey wouldn't look the same.
Absolutely.
If you hadn't walked through that, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's interesting, and life has a great way of explaining that to you. And sometimes it's a really hard lesson.
Oh yeah.
Like, I was interviewing right before I left my position over there. I was interviewing for other government relations positions. One was for a public policy manager for a really large corporation that is going global. And the other one was for another trade association, actually in Dallas. So I did not get the job for the corporation only because I didn't have a law degree. Well, essentially that's what they told me at the end, but it was me and this other guy the guy had graduated from top-notch universities and had, the work for governor, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And here I am with my, basically state school degree and experience under my belt with no fear. And I think that's the thing, is like, I literally had zero fear. And that's why I got so far along. And that was like a 20 interview process. Like, it was pretty crazy to get that far into the process. And then, they had to determine between the two candidates, and I didn't get it. And I was really heartbroken. But at the same time, I was kind of alleviated, because now that I look back, I'm like, oh my God, the amount of time and effort that these people give away of their own personal time to be pioneers for this other company. Like, I would have zero time for myself at that point,
Yeah. So tell us a little about what it looks like on the flip side of that, like what you're doing now. I know that you've started the empowerment and all that podcast. And I love that name, because it's like, what do you talk about on your podcast? Empowerment and all that.
Right. It was, well, my day job, I actually work for an amazing company now. I am actually a rep for a sleep studies lab. And the way that actually aligns with what I'm doing in general is, like, I told myself I will never again work for another company where I'm not helping people. Because on the flip side, I wasn't necessarily doing that. And I was doing a little bit of damage to people versus, like, actually helping. And so, that is obviously something that helps me help other people in the medical industry here in Houston. But empowerment and all that literally was a birth child of, I'd been thinking about starting a podcast for a year. I think you told me you did the same, like it had taken a while before you launched. And I was with some girlfriends and I was like, y'all, I just found this app and apparently you can just like start a podcast. It's no big deal. You just press the button, press play, and you can start it. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. And I was like, what? And the first topic that came to my mind, self-love. First thing that came out of my mind. Now, looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I should have edited it. But I kept it exactly raw and hard to hear and all that exactly the way it was, because I'm like, there's nothing more beautiful about self-love than to be honest and true about your emotions. And you can hear everybody's emotions in that episode. And I'm like, I am not touching that. It's going to stay exactly the same way that it was from the beginning. So this was literally back in May and they were like, just do it. And so I did. And now it's like, it opened up a whole new world of, just so much, and the fact that I'm not afraid of being vulnerable and talking about in the podcast or this or that. And it's like, even having this conversation with you like 2 weeks ago, where I'm like, let's call them and see, let's just do this. Let's just try to light a spark. And even if that doesn't work, then that's fine. If we shoot high and end low, it's fine. Like, at least you and I now have a relationship and that'll continue to grow. And, we'll talk about each other's podcasts. And I feel like just the amount of things that have come out in such a positive way since I press record, I should say. Although I have forgotten to press record sometimes. But
oh, I know. Isn't that the worst? It's the worst. I know. You're like, oh my gosh, I just missed all of that. It was so good.
I know. Oh my God. That's happened. And luckily I had a great guest who came back and was like, don't worry about it. We'll do it again. I'm like, thank you, because I feel crazy right now.
So you and I had spoken in the beginning about your original idea for the podcast, being a single female driven, career oriented, very empowerment focused.
Mm-hmm.
Your original idea was single relationships, right?
Well, it was going to be, honestly, it was just, I wanted to be very broad about it. I wanted it to just be like something about empowerment where everyone in the world could hear, like, this massive idea that I was going to just shoot it out there and every single person was going to hear it. And I was like, every single person in the world is going to be able to relate to me because every single person needs to hear this. And I'm like, literally after a couple of episodes, I was like, no, like, women need to be empowered. And this just needs to go in the direction of everything that we can talk about in general, topics that are related to women, that, the good topics, the bad topics, helping people get a little bit more directed, just all these, and then having some amazing people on the show too, that have such great things to talk about. Like, for example, you had mentioned that your power word was purpose. And I'm like, yes, please. Because everyone is always searching for purpose. Like, everyone wants to feel like that connection as to, why am I here? What can I do? What am I supposed to be doing? Right. And I was like, yes, every woman feels that way too, and I feel like that's such a great direction in which you're going in with your podcast. So yeah, I mean, it solidified it truthfully after the conference. It was just like, all signs point to, we need to uplift our sisters. We need to trumpet for them. We need to be the elephants to protect the women when they're down and vulnerable, and be the ones that are standing tall next to them when something beautiful has happened, and cheer them on. And that's what I want to do. And I want to continue to do that. And, I'm hoping that will be something that if I can help one person out there and make their day better, then I've accomplished my mission.
That is what I say every single week. I'm like, my goal is, if I can reach one person sitting at home on their couch that knows that they have a spark in their heart, and I can encourage them to get up off the couch and go follow whatever call it is on their life, then I've accomplished exactly what I'm showing up to do week in and week out with this show. And I think I knew all along that my show was going to be committed to specifically women.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason behind that is I've always responded well to men. And in this space, there's a lot of males in this space. It's a primarily male dominated industry, like the podcasting and the personal
Mm-hmm.
development. And so I had heard other speakers, and even at, my skincare business, our conferences, our conventions, we were having men on stage speaking to the women. And I was always like, this doesn't even make sense. Like, you've got 15,000 women. Where are the women that are going to encourage and inspire?
Mm-hmm.
Why is Daniel Pink the, keynote speaker of the day? And so when I saw Mel Robbins speaking, that was like the first time that I really like witnessed a female saying the same things that I heard in my head and the same things that I told other women. So I think it's super important that we stay true to that. I think it's a good thing. I think that the more of us that there are, the stronger the community is going to be, the better people are going to be for it. And my absolute favorite thing that I have learned, I'm almost 50 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right at the 50 mark at this point. And just the beautiful souls I've gotten to meet, the quote unquote friendships I've built that, I stay in contact with nearly every single person that's been a guest on my podcast, that I circle back around, and we've got this little like community built out of it. So I'm excited, and I'm glad that you're standing up and you're using your voice, because I think it's super important. I think oftentimes women, and I've actually had these conversations, so I don't just think this, women tend to think, well, when I get married, I'm going to fulfill my purpose. When I get married and have kids and a family, I'm going to fulfill my purpose. And it's almost like they wait because they don't know what they have to offer as a single female.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's so important that you step into this space and you share your voice and you say, look, it has nothing to do with whether you're single or you're married or you're a parent or you're not a parent. It just has to do with a call on your heart and walking in purpose, truly.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because I definitely, at some point in my life, I think I just stopped and was like, I need to hurry up and get into a relationship or whatever. And there were moments where I had my little breaks and I was just like, oh, this is all going to come together. This is all going to make sense when I get married. And it's like, no, you don't. You are supposed to supplement each other.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't keep you from being the individual that you are and have you uplift the beauty that you are and everything that's inside of you. And that shouldn't go away.
I love that. And how much sweeter will that relationship be when you walk into it knowing that you are standing in your purpose, in your truth, independently, and the best version of you that you can bring to that relationship. Like, what an amazing gift to your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the awesome pieces that I took away too and I love to listen to, I'm obviously pretty analytical, has always just been something for me, right? But like listening to people who have marriages, who, like older couples, younger couples, newlyweds, divorcees, I like listening to everybody's story when it comes down to this, because it's like, what works, what doesn't work. And the one thing I always hear is like, oh, my spouse is supportive of X, or we communicate, or, and you can always tell those people who, for some reason or another, the basis of their foundation obviously is love, but there has to be some sense of support and communication. Either one partner is a little bit more supportive than the other, but it's so important, and like you said, how beautiful is it going to be when I finally meet somebody, or, whoever's listening, when you finally meet someone who, is standing in their purpose and you're standing in yours, and you both are just supporting each other throughout the rest of your lives together. Like, just
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Well, too bad that we have an audience of all women. Otherwise, we could just go ahead and put a plug out there.
Right.
Ladies, if you have a gorgeous brother that is standing in his purpose. Right. Rita, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me in Houston, Texas, but on social media, I am Rita. I'm at Rita_Bautista 1111. And you can also find the podcast Instagram is at Empowerment and All That. So yeah, that's
all right.
That's where I'm at.
And so you are an Instagram girl.
I have been working on Instagram and Facebook. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I will get this under wraps. I'll figure this out because I'm one of those people. I'm like, oh no, I have to master this.
That's right. Listen, social media is like the Wild West, and we just have to be willing to evolve and learn the tools. So,
oh my gosh,
it's been super exciting to chat with you. Your podcast, what platforms is your podcast on?
So you can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Google Podcasts, sorry. All the major ones, honestly. So yeah, Google, Spotify, Apple. And then if you're on a desktop, you can go to anchor.fm and you can find me. Empowerment and All That is on there as well.
Awesome. I will put that in the show notes. And I had such a great time chatting with you today. Thanks for taking some time out. And we're going to have to get together in person again sometime.
Oh my gosh, we need some wine nights for sure.
I know, girl. I know. All right. Well, you have a great week and keep doing exactly what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Brandy. I appreciate it.
In case you couldn't tell, we both have just a tad bit of a purpose-filled fire lit in our souls. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed Rita's conversation and mine as much as I did, because I think she is just a joy and a delight. And we actually had quite a bit of off-microphone conversation this weekend as well. She's phenomenal. You guys make sure you go check her out over on social media. As always, if you like what you heard today, do me a huge favor. Subscribe to this podcast. Share it on all forms of social media. Give us a rating and go tell all of your friends about this podcast, you guys. I cannot wait to chat with you next week. But until then, go out and live your best purpose-filled lives.